Hello and welcome to this virtual Edu Summit featuring Google for Education, BIAPS Events and ACER. Tonight we will be going through subject-specific use of Google tools, and hopefully you will go away with some ideas of how we can use Google tools within the classroom that are more subject-specific. We have got myself tonight, and you have got Neil Atkins, who will be joining us in a short while to go through the sessions. But in the meantime, let's get social and sharing and what's happening. Okay, hashtag Google PD and Google Apps Events on Twitter to share what's happening and what you're seeing tonight. And also drop a comment or two if you're liking what you are seeing, and if you have ideas on how it can be used in the classroom, just drop it in. Let's have a hear of what you have. Okay, so tonight's speakers is Neil Atkin, who is an educator and a consultant, and myself as well. I'm Zaitoon Bukhari, and I am a Google certified trainer, innovator and coach, but more importantly, I'm a science teacher as well, so more specifically physics. So there will be quite a little bits about maths and about science, but also looking into some of those other subjects where we can use Google Workspace tools more specifically. So tonight we're going to start off with myself for the first half an hour. We're going to get creative by designing interactive workbooks and an escape room quizzes. Now, I have used both of these two tools within my school and within my mat, and they've gone down a treat. So I am going to showcase to you tonight how we can create these two things with the use of Google Slides. I'm also going to add in Google Docs, because some of the new updates that are coming into Google Docs lends itself perfectly to this idea of creating workbooks. And these workbooks aren't just simple workbooks that would allow you to substitute what you already have in the classroom. It's about adding depth, and it's about supporting those students who need that extra bit of scaffolding within that lesson, or just give them something that will intrigue them whilst they are learning within your lessons. And we're also looking at ways we can gamify the use of Google Forms. So without further ado, we are going to move on, and I'm going to go through my session looking at creating interactive workbooks. Okay, so what we are going to be having a look at is the idea of a workbook. Now, here's a very typical Google slide of what you may use within a classroom. Obviously, I'm a science teacher, so some of these slides are going to be very science heavy. So I'm going to work through and showcase to you during lockdown what kind of things that we did that transformed the way we were teaching our students who were sat at home. So very first thing is that our presentations and our classroom resources started to become a little bit more interactive. So for example, instead of having the video playing at the front of the class, we were allowing students with embedded videos within the resources that we were providing them with to have their own time and space to work through those videos, just to give them that support, to give them that little bit of extra help as they were working through this particular concept of Half-Life. Now, alongside that, we also gave them working examples. So we had a variety of different graphs in this occasion, and we showcased how you could best use or read those graphs. So we provide them with worked examples. And then we went on with questions and providing them with, again, a workbook kind of question where they would have to work through and work out the answers to each one of these questions there. Now, what we can see straight away is that there's different levels within this workbook. There's a basic level, which then moves on to more medium kind of questions, and really pushing for those harder questions and giving that challenge to students all within one workbook. And what that was allowing the students to do is work through at their own pace. Also, not to forget that we had this little video right at the beginning that allowed them to provide some scaffolding, but they were able to work through the different levels of questioning within their particular science lesson, and they were able to provide themselves with if they were struggling on a particular question, then that was where they were asking for help. We obviously had this embedded within our Google Classroom, and with that, it allowed the teachers, allowed the students to ask the teachers directly if they were struggling with a particular question. We then, when we came back after lockdown and into the same classrooms, we didn't let go of these workbooks. We continued to use these within the lessons, and it provided our students with an independent route to what they were learning and how they could learn. And it provided, again, if they were struggling on a particular question, the teacher was then able to help that one child and go through the lesson concept with them, or the particular question concept with them, instead of having to wait with the full class. It replaced printing significantly. We didn't print out any of these questions. Everything was done digitally in our workbooks. And these workbooks started to accumulate over time. So we started to add extra slides as the year went on. And before we knew it, before we got to a particular half term, we had a good structure of our lessons by lesson questions, and also we had a good representation of what the students had learnt and how they are done from there. So I'm just going to show to you how we can embed the use of the videos and adding the questions to it into a Google slide deck, and also changing and customizing the slide deck so it looks more like a workbook. So the way we do this is we're going to just go to an absolute blank slide deck here, and the very first thing I'm going to go and do is, if I go to File, I can go right down to Page Setup, and I'm going to change this from it being widescreen to customizing. And when I customize the size of my page, I can customize it so that it looks like an A5, an A4 sheet, and so on. So I always get these wrong way around, so let's just hope I get them right on this one. I'm going to go 21 inches on that, on the first box, and then 29, see if that works. It worked for me. So that then gives me the look and feel that I need for an A4 sheet. So from there, when the students are working through these booklets, they still have the feeling that they are working through a booklet that they would be given in class, really. So then from here, I would add my title. So I'm just going to write Amazing Science as an example. And then within this, I also want to insert a quick little image. Okay. Now, I'm going to search the web for my image, and I'm going to just pop in there science. So see what image will pop up. Now, if you are very new to the use of Google tools, this is a really nice way of making sure that the pictures that you are picking out for your work are copyright free, so they don't have any issue. You don't have any issues with copyright, especially if you are choosing to insert from within a document. So now I have a picture very quickly inserted in here. I can customize it and make it look how I need it to look. What I could also do is, normally my little explore button just down in the bottom right hand corner here should have lit up, and what that does, it takes into consideration that you've put a title in and you've put in a image, and it'll start to customize the look of your workbook for you, so it looks more professional, so you're not wasting time on trying to make it look a certain way. So we're just going to stick with what it looks like here. I'm quite happy with that. And then I'm just going to add in a new slide underneath. Now you can see, because I've customized the size of my actual slide deck, every page I'm going to open up after this is all going to be customized to that side, to that particular size. And then all of my layouts within there are already customized to that particular size. So I'm not having to work around and think, oh, I need to go back and do 21 times 29 again every single time. So if I'm happy with just adding in this particular one, and I would like the students to do a task where they watch the video below and then add your thoughts to the comment box. So this is my instruction to the students. I then I'm going to just minimize a little bit of this comment box so that it just sits underneath for me. And then I'm going to just go up to insert, and I'm going to go to video, and I'm going to pick up a video on particles, which is a science topic. And this particular video seems fine. So I'm just going to insert my video. Now, if you are, again, new to the use of Google tools, you can see how easy and how quick it is to insert videos, add images to your document. So the creation of your workbook can be quick, easy, fast. But what I can also do, now that I've inserted my video, is if it's a particular video that I want the students to see just a small snippet of that video and not the entire video, I can choose where I want this video to start from and where I want it to end. So this particular video is only 4 minutes and 34 seconds. But if I wanted them to just watch the last minute and 34 seconds, I can ask for it to play from 3 minutes and it will end at the end. So it's able to edit and cut that video to size from where you want. So if you are showing a very large video, especially like in English, where you're having to show where you watch like Romeo and Juliet, for example, in the English curriculum, and if there's a particular scene that you want to analyze within there, you can take that video and just snip it into that particular scene and embed that scene and allow that discussion to happen once they've seen that scene. The reasoning behind this is that it allows the students to see what they are upfront again, what they are being asked for. It helps them remember the scenes. Quite often, I've been in education for 15 odd years now, and quite often you will see a video being played or a book being read first, and then the video version of that book being played, and then the students will then be asked to go away and analyze what they saw and add their points of view, their thought process behind a particular scene. And doing it this way, what that does is that it allows them to refresh that memory and really focus in on those one or two particular scenes that are really, really important. Now, we can take this a step further, okay? So we can particularly put in our one scene that we want. We could also add in a snapshot from the book that you might be reading. Okay, I know I've got my science on here and it's kind of like showing you the science, but I'm talking about English at the same time because I want you to understand how universal this concept can be. Okay, so you can add a snapshot from your book that you are reading so that students can see within their book where it is related to. It might just be a screenshot video, screencast video of you yourself annotating that particular script, or annotating a diagram in science, annotating or creating or showing how to work out a formula in maths, but allowing that video of you. If you use Chromebooks within your school, then the use of screencast is something that is being really, really looked into with Chromebooks, and it's a tool that's embedded within Chromebooks now. So you're able to make quick little screencast videos that allow students to see and video. And if you have got a Chromebook and you're not aware of that, I'm just going to jump down to the bottom of my screen here, and I'm just going to go to screen capture, which is just on there. And you can see when I pick up screen capture, it will give me the idea of it, whether I want it to be a screenshot or whether I want it to be a video. And I can literally just highlight the area I want that to record, and it can very quickly record that little video for me. So again, that is an inbuilt function within Chromebooks now, and it allows you to, within seconds, create those quick little videos for your students to provide that scaffolding and support that they might need. So once you have your video embedded and you have a little text box ready for the students to add in their comments, you can then move on to your next page where you can add maybe a diagram that you want them to complete, like a flow diagram. Again, this is taking the concept of, we have this concept where if you are providing a student with a piece of reading, What do they do with that reading? Do they just read the script, or are they doing something with that reading of that script to make it embed within their memory? What are they doing with that scripture? So creating a little diagram within here allows them to then take that big scripture that you've just given to them to read and then summarize it into maybe 3 sentences, again summarize it again into 3 words, so that if they remember those 3 words, it will allow them to remember those sentences, hence allow them to remember the bigger script that you originally shared with them. So little things in which we can have like a hierarchy kind of idea here, where they are breaking down that structure into smaller words, smaller sentences, that allows them to build a bigger picture for them. When it comes to revision and when it comes to recall of information, the students are able to recall a vast amount of knowledge just by a word trigger, maybe, or a picture trigger. So within my school, we tend to have a bit of both. If the students need a picture trigger, then it might be a picture of something that they have drawn themselves. We all do sketch notes. We all know what sketch notes are, and it's a big thing at the moment where we are able to summarize what we're doing into sketch notes. So this may well be the idea of creating those within here. We're also able to, within here, obviously add in audio as well. Now, audio, again, if you have got those, if you've got students in your class who require instruction. Now, I am talking about perhaps the younger students, primary school students, EYFS maybe, students who just need that little bit of repetition. So for example, if they're learning a particular word and they need all the pronouns of a word, or a way of pronunciation of that word, what you're able to do is record your audio and then embed that audio into your workbook, so that when they are at home or when they are away from you, or they're working with the TA, they're able to hear your voice, they're able to hear what you've asked them to do, and they're not having to put their hand up and wait for you to come and give them that feedback again or explain what you want them to do again. So adding that audio within there again helps with creating your workbook to become more interactive. So what you'll see, what I'm trying to do here is not saying, here's a worksheet, let's just take that worksheet and pop it onto a slide and you can just fill in the missing blanks on it. No, it's about stepping up and providing an in-depth support structure within your actual slides to provide the students with the ability to access that information in a variety of different ways. So taking that into consideration, we've had a quick whistle-tour look at slides and what we can do within slides, of different features that we can embed in there. And obviously you can make your slides look, workbook look amazing. You can really play with GIFs and different things that will bring your workbook to life, that will engage the students. The other option here is, again, obviously, Google Docs. Now, Google Docs is becoming one of my favorite tools to go to at the moment, and simply because of all the smart chips that have been embedded within Google within Google Docs, sorry. So if you are creating a workbook kind of idea within here and you need to add scaffolding for your students, a nice little way is to insert a drop down menu. Okay, I am just going to increase the magnification of my screen so you can just see where that sits. So that just sits in insert, and just if you scroll down there, it's in drop down. And what that drop down menu does, it allows you to add a variety of different options for the students. Okay, so just before I add that drop down menu in, I'm going to add in a sentence. Okay, and my sentence, for if I was to do this for primary school children, the very youngest primary school children, I would say something like, we had a look at beans, they were, and then I'll give them the option. Okay, what were they? They were. So if I insert my drop down, I could add the color. So I can add color, as my configuration. That's what I want them to do. They were green. Just get rid of that. Green, blue, and red. Okay, and I can even color coordinate these so that visually the students are able to see what the colors might be. So they might not be able to read the word yet, okay, but they can visually recognize the different colors. And I'm just going to get rid of this fourth one. We only want 3 options. And what that does, it allows you to then, for the students, okay, it allows the students, it's picking up an American here, to choose which color they think the beans were. Okay, so with the quick little drop down menu here, they're able to add in what the missing answer might be. Now, putting that into context in terms of creating your workbook, that could well be your missing word that they choose from. Or it could be this concept of creating an adventure story, okay? Which path will this story take them on? You could add images within here where the students can visualize which path they might be taking. And also it allows you to do the same thing in here where you can still go in and insert your images within here as well. So, and emojis now as well. So it allows you to, again, build something that's a bit more interactive for the students. Okay. So they are my 2 little things that I just want to show you in terms of creating an interactive workbook within the schools and the classrooms. We have been using this quite often within my school and for our lower ability groups and for the children who need just that little bit more support to help them with the understanding. It's become the perfect tool. It just helps them excel a little bit more than what they would have done waiting for a teacher or a TA to come and help them one-to-one. So the next thing that I'm going to look at is a breakout puzzle. So the idea of creating this breakout puzzle, which I'm just going to put this into preview mode so you can actually see what it actually looks like when we go through it. Okay. I'm just going to go back in there and just go to my responses up here. That's all good. Okay, so what this allows you to do is gamify the use of Google Forms within your classroom. So if you have quizzes that you know that you're going to be using, this is a nice little way of gamifying those quizzes so that they are so that there are different levels to them. So the way these breakout quizzes work or puzzles work, the students will enter their first level and they need to work out what the answer to that question is. And if they get the answer wrong, okay, so this question here is how many months are there in 12 years? Okay, now this is an adult questionnaire. I use it quite often in my training. And the answer, if you got the wrong answer, let's say if I put 143, okay, and I click next, it'll tell me to try again. Okay, so straight away, the student can't move to level 2. They have to work their way through level 1 and work out what that answer is before they can move on to the next level, right? So if I now said, no, it's 144, okay, I figured it out and click next, it allows me to go to my next level. So it says, awesome, level 2, let's do this, okay? And my next question's there. Again, it's a little bit of a question that allows, it's a reasoning question for those in primary school. So Jeff thinks of a number, he deducts 5 from it and then divides the result by 3. His answer is 25. What number did he start with? Okay, quite a difficult question. Might take a bit of time for the student to work it out using even pen and paper to work it out. And again, if they get the answer right, have I got it right? I have got it right. We'll move on to the next level. Okay, so which is a prime number closest to 100? It's going to be 101. And I'm just going to show you the last question. While on my way to St. Ives, I saw a man with 7 wives. Each wife had 7 sacks. Each sack had 7 cats. Each cat has 7 kittens. Kittens, cats, sack, and wives. How many were going to St. Ives? Okay, it's a trick question. The answer is actually just 1. okay? And what that allows you to do is you get to the end, the students have showcased that they've been able to work from level 1 right the way to level 4, and they're happy with that, and they couldn't have got to level 4 if they hadn't worked through those answers. Once they're ready, they can submit their answers in. So how did I get those different levels? How did I get my Google Forms to stop and not allow anybody to go further on until they got the right answer? So let me show you how I did that. So I'm just going to jump back into my quiz, as you would see it when you are editing and creating your quiz. So you can see this is my first question. I'm just going to make my screen a little bit bigger so you can actually zoom in it and see it carefully there. Okay, so my section 1 obviously was just an introduction to my breakout quiz. And then I went on and I looked at section 2. So I'm adding in different sections using this button just at the bottom of my menu bar. Okay, so my section 2 is actually my getting ready. Let's get started. This is level 1 for you. Okay, and then I add in my question. And you can see that I've added in a question that is a short answer question. Now, this is a little bit of the niggly bit. It has to be a short answer question. So the kind of quizzes that you're going to be thinking of to do needs to be quick and sharp answers. Brilliant for one-word answers, these are. So once I've put my question in, I'm just going to click on where I would create my question. So I've added my question in. I've put it as a short answer. And then what I've gone and done is just at the bottom here, you have 3 little dots going down, okay? And then there's something called response validation. And now I've added my response validation to this. And that basically allows me to validate that response before it moves on to the next section, okay? So once I've clicked that, this little bar here will appear. And then I can choose whether I want this validation to be a number, a text, a length. Okay, so I'm going to stick with a number, and it has to equal to 144 because that's my correct answer there. Okay, and once I have that, I'm happy. It will allow it to go through if the person adds in 144. If they don't, then I have a little message here that comes up every time they put in a wrong answer. So here I would add in my little message to them that you've got the wrong answer. A little message say try again. Okay, again, it's a required question, but that's the only thing that I have done. It allows them to continue to the next section. Now if I want to make this a little bit more complicated, if I said there was 2 options to my answers here, there was 144, maybe 180, who knows? Okay, if the person had chosen 180, I could have had it validated, but then the person would automatically move to another section. So instead of going to level 2, they might have jumped to level 3 instead and leave out number 2, section 2 on there. Okay, so you can do moving from section to section, but I like the idea of it validating the answer, moving on to the next section, adding in a new level, and then doing exactly the same thing where it's a number, it's equal to 80. And then obviously I have my little message that says try again if they get it wrong. Okay. And when that is complete and ready, and this is obviously I've shown you, this is what it looks like from a student perspective. It's a very neat little question quiz that will allow them to move from level to level as they start adding in the answers there. Okay. Now, that's a very, very quick, again, a quick little whistle tour of how we can use Google quizzes for the use of a gamified version of Google quizzes. And it's a nice little opener to training sessions as well. If you are a leader, if you want to do a little bit of an icebreaker, it's a nice little way of starting off a session like that as well. Okay, so time is flying. I'm just going to jump back onto my slide here. And just whilst Neil gets himself ready to go through the sessions with you, looking at subjects, specifically science and maths as well. It's 2 in 1 with Neil this afternoon. A couple of little things I want to work my way through with you today. we have from Apps Events Google Workspace for Education Plus. You can get a free 60-day trial of Google Workspace for Education Plus. If you are interested, or if your school is interested on moving on to the Google Education Plus package, then please do give us a shout. 60-day free trial there waiting for you. Okay, we've also, obviously, this session here tonight is being sponsored by ACER for Education. So thank you to ACER for sponsoring us tonight. But you can also win a free seat to any of our future Apps Events, boot camps or summits. Okay, there is a go-to little link here for you to have a look at. I'll pop it into chat if you want to have a little snoop as to what's coming up. And then also we have our free online educator and admin Google courses. Now, these have been quite a hit. If you've been on Twitter and you've been looking up on Twitter, a lot of people are working their way through these, and they are absolutely fantastic. Our own trainers have created this, and it's going down a treat. So please do have a look, learn.appsevent.com if you want free online educator and admin Google courses. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Neil. Now, I am very, very excited to have Neil with me today. Neil is, hi, Neil.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Neil is a, go on, Neil, you can actually tell us a little bit about yourself.
If I could tell you a little bit about myself. Yeah, okay. So basically, I'm a physicist. Another physicist. And I'm actually really quite weirdly, I'm an anti-technologist. I don't like technology. Certainly, as I'd much rather kids get their hands dirty. I'd much rather they pull things apart, etc. But one of the things I'm interested in, and I'm not going to do a technical thing of this is how to use Google. Is I'm going to do like looking at the pedagogical side, because what I've been doing during lockdown was actually delivering live lessons to students. And then I was part of an EdTech program, which is using Google Classroom in order to improve students' learning as part of a DFE funded program. And what I find terrifying really is that what's happening at the moment is people are putting away the Chromebooks. They're putting it there. We thought we'd got to a stage where it's like, wow, these things are amazing. They definitely can add huge amounts of pedagogical brilliance using Google tools in order to actually make things really happen. And it quite scares me that they haven't. So this is not going to be a technical session where I'm going to show you this is how to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and provoke thinking and say, well, how do we use these tools in order to make something happen? And one thing I'm not going to show you, just want to start, is I got this idea of drafting. And I want you to just really, the first thing I always say when I'm doing technology is to actually think about, well, if I didn't have the tool, how could I do this? So one of the things which I think is hugely important is drafting and redrafting. And what tends to happen is we tend to teach stuff, and as any physics teacher will know, we're incredibly inefficient. We're fighting against a belief system that's often very different to what our belief system is, how the world works. And so it's not enough just to say this is what's happening. We have to keep going backwards and forwards. And if I was trying to do something with when I want students to actually revisit their work and improve their work and send it back and keep marks of it so I can show progress, you think of the amount of marking that would take place. It's insane. It would be absolutely ridiculous. So what I'd be doing is say, okay, hand your work in. I'll take all their work in. I'd find it. I'd mark it. Then I'd actually put it. What do you need to do to improve it? Well, send it back. Then it comes back in again. Right, mark it again. Add some more comments to it. Send it back again. And that didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So if we're using, say, Google Classroom, and we're using rubrics and we're using things, I haven't got this set up. I could do this another session. I would actually have a rubric set up. The students would hand in their work to me. I would actually, what I call pre-mark it. I'll just look at the rubrics. Bang, bang, bang. Here we go. Boof. Off we go. Back it goes to them. They've got this pre-marking. They know that what they basically need to do to improve. I can add a few comments to it using comment banks. I could use Mote, get a voice note, and I think voice notes, to me, the technology behind voice notes is incredible, because when we're marking, two things. We've just spent ages marking. That the students who most need it are the ones who are least able to access what we're writing. So most of the time what we're doing is absolutely total waste of time educationally for that student. It looks good for the person who's who's actually making sure that you're doing your marking, but in the real world it's not doing anything. And a voice note, and so many Google tools allow voice notes, and I think this just to me, if there's only one thing you do with it, allows me to go, oh, come on, Ahmed, what are you doing, mate? Look at that. Well, why have you done that like that again? How many times have I told you? And it gives so much more information. How can I write that to Ahmed? How can I write that gives that personalization? I can't. It doesn't give me any of those kind of options at all. So that's just one of the ideas that I'm using. So what I want you to do today, I'm just going to show you something in terms of teaching something in science. And I'm sure lots of people have seen this before. What's interesting as well, I found that kids have seen lots of things. They've seen it on TikTok. They've seen it. They don't try it out. They don't think about it. They go, oh, yeah, I've seen it. And they think they know it. But this would be a simple question. So I'm looking at forces, and I'm going to teach forces. And the first thing I need to do before I teach forces, I'm going to show you Google Formula. I won't show you how to set it up because I've just had a wonderful demonstration of how to set up a quiz. I start every lesson with a quiz. Every single lesson I start it with a quiz. I end every lesson with a quiz. Often it's the same quiz because what I'm doing, I've shuffled the questions around. And a simple thing we can do, and I love the way it was actually shown before. I can't show you any better than that. But what I started doing was doing things where the first lesson, I give them a quiz based on that lesson. And guess what? The next lesson, I give them the same quiz. And then I add up what's actually on that lesson. And then the next lesson, I keep at it. So what we're doing is a Google form. It's not just a single thing. It's an evolving thing, which we actually do it. And when I see that the students are actually getting questions wrong, and I'll show you this in a minute. When I see the questions getting wrong, then I can refocus on that. And I think, how can I possibly do that without the tool? I can't. Anyhow, let's start by doing something, this is one of my typical lessons. This is one of the online live lessons I start. And I want you to think about how might we get people's ideas. And the first thing we really need to do is to get students thinking. It doesn't matter what technology we use. If we haven't got a sense of engagement, it doesn't do. And people think, oh, the technology engaging. It's not. The teacher there's no engagement. It's completely neutral technology. So we actually need to provoke our students and provoke thinking. So here's the question. Here's a tea bag. And the question is simple. How do I make a tea bag fly? Okay, so I'm going to make a tea bag fly. How can I make it fly? And there's some really interesting things that happen with this. Is that if I ask this to very high achieving, and often in very girls' schools, and I've done lots of things with the gender balance and things, the girls will actually want to know, well, what do you mean by fly? How long has it got to fly for? Etc. Reasonable questions. When I do it in a very challenging school, the tea bag, or the very high achieving schools, the tea nearly always remains in the tea bag. Tea bags never get open. In very, very challenging schools, the tea bag will be ripped open, everything will be thrown around, and it's chaos, absolute madness. And what we're aiming to do is getting somewhere between those 2 points. But what we're looking at is technology. How we need to think about what is the tea bag fly? Okay, so we can use sort of something like Jamboard. We can use Padlet. We can use lots of technical things where we can actually just come up with some ideas. Google Chat is fabulous for this because I'm not interested in looking back at something. I'm interested in getting people just go bang, 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 bang. What are you thinking? So we come up with all these ideas. What do tea bag fly? And I go, right, okay. Well, I can show you how to make a tea bag fly, but I'm not going to. And I can make it fly. I can make it fly without touching it, without blowing it, without doing any of the things that you say to do to it. And the students immediately want to know how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it? And this is fundamental about science. First thing we have to do is we get them to shout, where's the evidence? So what people are doing is when we're looking for whatever claim I make, my students shout at me or in chat where they are in the world, where's the evidence? They're giving me want to know the evidence. So eventually I'll say to them, right, well, I'll show you the evidence. Okay, I'll show you. This is how to make a tea bag fly. So here we go. So first thing I have to do is and this only works with staple tea bags. It works with virtually every staple tea bag. Be careful when you do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tea out of the tea bag. And this leads a question then, and again, we've got all sorts of different tools we can use for this one. On chat, I think is a wonderful tool. Is it still a tea bag? Doesn't have tea in it anymore. Is it still a tea bag? Well, let's find out. Let's have a look and see. So what I'm going to do with the tea bag is just turn this breadcrumb down here so you can see it. Oh, that's wonderful. It's actually bypassing. I love this. It's not actually, StreamYard's not going to let this, not using a different breadcrumb. I'm going to have to actually lift this one up to show you. This is going to be really interesting whether I can actually show you this or not here. I should have checked this before. I'm sorry, guys. This is the first time I've actually used this one, StreamYard, like this. And I should have checked my webcam first and thought it was actually going to be doing the right webcam. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to set fire to the tea bag and I'm going to have to lift it up at the same time. Should be interesting. Right. Okay. So here we go. Now, so we set fire to the tea bag. And what I'm interested in is what's happening. What's happening? Why is it happening? And there goes my flying tea bag. So here is my demonstration. Here's something that I've got here. If anyone's actually live here, make a comment. What are you thinking about it? Okay. So why does it fly? And here when I'll switch into a Jamboard, and what I can do is I can do things is what's going on here. Just really got to understand what's happening to my students. So at this point here, I'll just show you that I'll have started by showing it. So let's just do a share screen on this one. Again, so let's just switch to a tab. And this is my Forces Misconceptions test. So this is the one I give to all of my students at the very start of the lesson. So this is what's happening to them. So the first question I'm always asking, this is utterly crucial. So we've seen how to set these forms up, but what's the pedagogy behind it? Is this what to me is the most interesting thing? So first thing is actually get your name about it, but this point here is enormously important to me. How confident are you about doing the quiz? Are you supremely confident or are you not at all confident? And this is essential for me because what I'm actually doing with this one is finding out those people who, I don't mind low confidence and low competence. I can work with those all day. Which ones are the scary people? Which ones are the most challenging people? Which ones are going to be the ones who are really tough to deal with? The ones who are very confident but not very competent, because I've got to trash their misconceptions. I've got to trash their idea that they know what they're talking about. So here's these questions. They're really, really simple. And I've just used the Institute of Physics misconceptions in this one, where you can just look up misconceptions, go through your exam boards, whatever, see what the main problems that students have are, and create a test just to find those misconceptions. And are they true, are they false, or are they sometimes true? And this is essential. This idea of sometimes true is perfect to me in terms of setting up this form, because what I'm thinking there is, if somebody thinks a physics law is sometimes true, they have no understanding of physics. So sometimes true is a complete red herring. And in fact, virtually all of these are false. Now, when we look at the responses, it's quite interesting. So this is actually a group of teachers who I was actually training. These are primary teachers. They've done actually a lot better than teachers, but the average teacher scores about 14. The average teacher has about 8 different misconceptions within this one. But this allows me just very, very quickly within this quiz, I can actually look and see that these are the confidence of the teachers. And just really quickly, this could just imagine I've started my lesson, I've hit people with this test, and immediately I'm going through, I'm just rattling through this. I'm not even looking at the questions. What I'm looking at the length of the bars, and I'm looking for something where, look, boof. Okay, is this true? Sometimes true. Earth's magnetic and or spin create gravity. So this is, look, this is massive. 50% of people have got this wrong. And so this is I would never dream of teaching somebody that the Earth's magnetism, that the gravity is nothing to do with magnetism. I would never bother. I would never think about teaching it. This is something which is immense that's thrown up, because if I don't teach it, half the kids are actually doing it, getting it wrong. So that's the the key thing I'm looking for when I'm creating those misconceptions. So now the question is really, question for you. So I know their misconceptions. I'm starting teaching it. I've shown them a flying tea bag. How can I find out what their thinking is? What are they thinking? How do I actually find out? And this one is an ideal one to think is, well, if I'm going to use chat, and I've often used chat. I used chat a lot when I was actually when I was teaching online. And what I was finding was just getting really loads and loads of things, responses in chat, and I was thinking, oh, this is really good. I've got really good engagement. But when I did an analysis of the chat later, what I found was that only about 10 or 12 people were actually contributing to the chat, and the rest of them weren't. And the reason they weren't contributing to it was because chat gives them a name. As soon as you've actually got a name, I'm now making a public announcement. This is what my thinking is. And this is, to me, is massive about Google Tools, because this is the same thing as happening in a live classroom. What I'm doing with a live classroom is I'm asking questions, and the kids who actually already know the answers answer those questions back. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever to do this. And there's very little engagement, but teachers often think there is engagement because we're playing table tennis. And we're playing table tennis with those kids who already know the answers. And because lots of things are happening, we're thinking, oh, we've got them going here. But it's not going to that in depth. It's not really going to the in-depth side of things. So what can I actually do? Well, I can take photographs of things, and I can use something like Google Keep, or I can use Jamboard. And if I just want to show you how I might use a Jamboard in this one. Okay, so this is just a Jamboard on here. And what I can do is I can actually create this. I've set this up there, so they can write sticky notes on this Jamboard. So so I'm saying, well, why does the tea bag fly? And so, well, the tea bag flies, and this is crucial. What I'm looking for, the force upwards, greater than the force downwards. And that's the only thing I really want to see at the moment. And what you'll get is all sorts of weird and wonderful explanations. Now, what I do is one of the sticky notes is the great thing about the sticky notes is you can't see who wrote that. And what I'm doing is I'm using these in my classroom, and I'm getting all the students to add them up. And then what we're going to do with it, we're going to move them around to how good the definitions actually are. So let's just actually look. Let's just stick another one up on here as well. So this is another sticky note on it. Because the energy moves it upwards. Okay, and that's horrific to me, so it's quite terrifying to me. But what I've got here then, we can have a whole load of different sticky notes. And what we can do with those sticky notes is literally to move them over this way. So I'm going to actually have on this side the ones which are, let's just stick a little text box on there. Good. Physics. And on the other side, we put dodgy physics. So we can actually just put another on here of dodgy physics on this side. This is really, oh, sorry, hang on it. It's not actually touching in there. Never mind. Let's just go in there again. Dodgy physics on this side. And what we're going to do there is we're going to actually put them in order. Okay. And what I want people to think about when we're actually thinking about this, it's a fundamental thing about this. How could we do this? How could we do this if we didn't have a computer? How could we do something where we've got this whole ability to actually work out that this is the best physics, this one's the worst physics, and things in between? So the physics is quite good. There's some good aspects of it, some bad aspects of it. And it's that level of thinking that, to me, fascinates me, and what we can actually do about this. So what else can we do with this? Well, we can bring in the images. So if I just do the images. So here we've got a flying tea bag here. Let's just whack this one in really quickly. And so here's a tea bag. At the moment it's taken off. And what we can do with this is get students, so we can share this in so many different ways, but this is the areas now. What do I want people to do? I want to put the force arrows on that tea bag. What's actually happening? What are the force arrows on the tea bag? Okay, we've actually now had this discussion. So we've had a discussion and we've actually talked about what the good physics is. So it's moving because the force upwards is great and the force going downwards. It's still accelerating upwards. So that must still be the case. So if we were going to do that, where am I going to draw my arrows? So I can draw an arrow going upwards. Okay, but here's a question. How big is the arrow going downwards? The arrow going downwards would be smaller because we've got an unbalanced force there. And then again, we can start using our Jamboard to start talking about, well, why? Why is it like that? Let's bring in the other parts. Let's actually have a look at the other parts, etc. And I hope people can kind of see from this what I'm building here compared to looking at it again. If I was going to run this lesson and within this lesson, I wasn't going to have using any technology whatsoever, what could I get from them? Yes, we can use mini whiteboards. Yeah, and so what we've actually got is, we've got these mini whiteboards, and so what are we thinking, guys? Bish, here's uphold a mini. And mini whiteboards are great; they're great in its ways. And I'm not saying don't use them at all. If there's the only tool you've got, then do use them, because it does give them. But the two main aspects, I think, are really, really important here. With many whiteboards, two things tend to happen. One is that the kids are having to publicly display their thinking. This is using chat as opposed to using Jamboard, and so we've got this public display, and lots of students will be very reluctant to do it. And the second thing is, what they tend to do is they tend to look for the clever kid, and they're looking at the other kids, and they're trying to find out, and they're trying to actually find out what that other person is writing before they actually put it up. But the other part about it, because once I've got the Jamboard, I can save that. I can export it, and I can use it. So we can stick it into Google Slides, and then we can actually have the discussions. We can use it on Moat. We can do all sorts of different combinations of things with it. We can make it so that it's really, really, really fundamentally get incredible learning from their thinking. And if I'm going to use a plain old mini whiteboard that doesn't have that, maybe I can take a photograph of them, etc. But how can I show what the thinking was at that? How can I develop that thinking? How can I know that's what they're thinking? How can I show any progress? I can't. I need to use the tools. And this tools I'm showing you here is just one of the simplest tools of all. It's just a very simple Jamboard, and it's just something of saying, hey, what you're thinking of there, now put some etceteras on it. And one of the other ones we can do a little bit more detail on, and I just want to show you this one ever so quickly, is, excuse me, is Google Keep. So if I just go and have a look on my Keep, and believe it or not, I don't have it on here anymore. I just must have actually closed it just before the presentation. So I'm not going to show you that one on Google Keep, rather than just show you something stupid. I'm going to actually show you. Let's actually just have a look and see what we can do. Is we can create it just, if we're actually putting onto Google Slides now, what I can do then, I can take my images from it, put it onto Google Slides, and then within my Google Classroom, I can actually have these images. So I've got images of the tea bag at various points on the time. So say looking at it and going, okay, let's stop sharing it from there. So I'm saying to the students, I'm saying to them, right, okay, I've got an image of this. Draw the forces at the moment. What's the image? When it's burnt halfway, what's happening now? When it's taken off, what's happening now? So the question I gave at the start of this session, and we're coming towards the end of it now as well, why does the tea bag actually fly? And in order to work that out, because now I've taken them through this, I know I've used the forces, I've used the forms in order to understand their thinking. I've talked about it, we talked about forces and everything, but I still haven't finally explained to them what is actually, why did it fly? And I'm just wondering whether you can tell me why it flies. Okay, so let's just go through it step by step. And apologies for having to actually hold it up. I'm amazed I managed to hold it up well enough to it there. So at the moment, we're looking at forces, and there's no change in motion if forces are balanced. So at the moment, the force going downwards, which is weight due to gravity, is balanced by an upward force. Question, what is creating that upward force? Well, it's actually a compression. That's very, very tiny compression of that surface. Again, massive misconception kids don't get. We've taught kids that solids are incompressible, and then we put something on a solid, and the only way you can explain the force is by saying that force is that it is actually being compressed. So we can actually draw the force arrow going downwards, force arrow going upwards. It's all shared. Once we set fire to the tea bag, what happens to the force going downwards? As it burns, the force going downwards is getting less because its weight is getting less. So my force arrow going downwards is going to get smaller. And at the same time, what we're doing is we're creating a convection current. So we're creating an area of lower pressure above the tea bag from the heat that's actually being, because it's actually causing expansion. And what we've now got is an unbalanced, we reach a point where there's an unbalanced force. The force going downwards is getting smaller, the force going upwards is getting bigger. And when it reaches the point where the force going upwards is bigger than the force going downwards, then that's why the tea bag flies. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. So what I'm actually doing here is showing you this is how to use the tools. This is a more generic version of why I use tools, very simple Google tools in a classroom, in order to massively impact on the education of those students. And just go back to the start and say, in a traditional classroom, if I was going to do this, why does a tea bag fly? How could I get that much thinking? How much I get using Jamboard will actually allow me to see everyone else's thinking. And we have to discuss other people's thinking. And yes, we can do it with the mini whiteboards, but we have no record of that. And what I can do with the with the Jamboard, I can drop those images into my Google Forms, into my quizzes, so we can actually keep reminding our students of the thinking. And with also reminding them of the misconceptions. This is hugely important. We can't just teach where we're teaching just the things on it, which we're also teaching about the misconceptions. And people might go, hang on a minute, this is actually a secondary lesson. This is how we run a secondary lesson. This is not. I've run this lesson to year threes, and I've been amazed by 8-year-olds, 7, 8-year-olds, and they can understand all of this. And I'm looking at their thinking. And when I actually teach it to the years 10s and 11s, to the 14, 15-year-olds, it's actually much, much harder to actually get that thinking out of there. And what we're aiming to do there is really get that insight into their thinking. How are they thinking what to do? How can I change that? Okay, so that's all from my science lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something from it. I'm going to change my hat and I'm going to teach you a maths lesson in about 5 minutes. So hang on in there.
Thank you so much, Neil. That was absolutely amazing. I think it's the first time we've had a live demonstration online. That's amazing. Thank you so much to Neil. Neil will be back shortly to go through some of the maths ideas that he has. So in the interim, just whilst, like Neil said, he's going to change his hat, I'm just going to add on a few little things here that we want to just share with you guys. Once again, there is the opportunity here about for our Premier Summer Summits and getting a free seat to any of our apps, events, boot camps. Now, we have a boot camp up and running in the northwest of England. believe it or not, yes, the northwest of England, in Manchester on the 21st of October. Looking at level 1 and level 2 educator. And if you are at that point where you are wanting to look into the level 1, level 2 where your schools are, then please do jump onto our website. All the information is there, and get yourself booked onto that particular one. Now, obviously, this whole session tonight is being sponsored by Acer. And now I personally use Acer Chromebooks, and I probably won't be going on to anybody else's because they are just brilliant. So these particular Acer Chromebooks, the range sizes are from 11 inches right the way to 15 inches. You can have the traditional Chromebook, or you can have the 360 degrees Chromebook, which obviously has many great advantages within the classroom. A lot of the things that Neil was talking about there, taking pictures of things, having that rear and world-facing cameras will allow you to do that. Annotating any information that on that Jamboard even, or any diagram, stylus, having a stylus with that would obviously really use that. And obviously they're being used by kids, so they are rugged so that they don't break instantly if they were dropped. So that's a little thing there in regards of the Acer Chromebook range. Now, going into a little bit of our certifications and what we have on offer. So a couple of dates that are coming up. If you haven't heard of ISTE, and if you are a digital lead or a digital enthusiast within your schools, ISTE is a very, very good standard-based qualification. So if you really want to find the pedagogy behind the use of technology in the classroom and really put some thought into the back of why we use it, and if you're at that point, then ISTE is one of the best certifications that we can provide you with. So we've got 2 upcoming cohorts, October the 10th and November the 8th. Again, you can find more information if you head over to our website, appsevents.com. And then finally, I just want to say, subscribe and watch and like and share our YouTube videos. There's plenty of videos on there and content being created every day on various different things that will be useful to you. So please do jump on. Also, we've got Podbean. If you like to listen to a bit of podcasting on the way into school, there's various things on there. And if you have got technicians, IT technicians in your school who needs that little bit of extra help to get their head around the Google stuff, there is a whole host of webinars and podcasts and information on there through Apps Events and Dan and our IT team have put together. So I am now going to hand it back to Neil, who is going to go through and hopefully showcase some of his math skills. And I'm looking forward to this one. Are you ready, Neil?
Right. I am ready, yes. Well, as ready as I will be. I'll just have to say on this one, hang on a minute, sorry. Always happens. That this is dropping in at the last minute. There was originally somebody else who was going to be delivering this session. So I haven't had a chance to actually prepare something and show something. So I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity, and I do apologize for this one in advance, but I'm sure as a physicist you'll let me off on this one, an opportunity to show how we can use, again, it's using technology but it's using it in a very, very simple way to actually show maths teachers how they can help science teachers and the physics teachers to actually work together, and how we can change the perception of algebra in maths, and how we can actually, but it's about using the technology, and it's always about, because the key fundamental thing is, it's a question I've asked, and it's asked you before, how does the technology add to learning? And what's really fascinating is there's loads and loads of research done into technology, and they've got this thing as well, when you give tablets to students, their performance diminishes. When you give computers to them, it diminishes. Look at these are things, and technology has a really, really bad rap. But what's never explained in any of these things is, what is the technology being used for? And if we're just using the technology as a replication, we're just using it, hey, this is what I could have done in the classroom, here's some technology, well, it doesn't lead to better outcomes, and so often certainly I'm one of the very old school old teachers who could still remember that the trip to the computer room was a free lesson for the teacher. It was like, right, oh, phew, I don't have to really do anything now. Well, I want you to do a solar system, do me a PowerPoint on the solar system, or, you know, and math teachers didn't really have that because there were some things that they could do, or watch these videos on algebra and tell me what you can actually do about it. And people still have this perception of not really seeing what they can do. And just seeing the advert of the, you know, to me, that the best possible piece of kit that any kid can have is a tablet with a stylus. So the ACEs that you showed before there, give me a class full of kids, give me a class full of those tablets, and I can do anything with them, and I will do things with them that you can't possibly do with just the books. And all too often, we've got teachers who are not understanding how we might do this. So I'm going to actually take you through some things. It's very, very simple. The technology I'm showing you is incredibly simple. What I'm really interested in you thinking about is what's the pedagogy and how can we use the technology in order to actually put this pedagogy. And I'm going to start off with something that students really, really, really don't like. Algebra. And I'm going to teach this really interesting the one I'm going to show. Just going to talk you through this one really, really quickly. I want you to think about how you might use the technology for this. And it's really, really straightforward. It's really, really simple. You go into a supermarket. I'm going to make you listen to this one. And sometimes I'll just say one thing about the technology. If I show the students everything and it's all on a PowerPoint and stuff, they don't really pay attention. So sometimes I don't use it at all. And I'm just going, right, listen, just really listen. So go into a supermarket. And when you go into the supermarket, what you actually do is there's two queues. And in the first queue, right, in fact, I'm going to show you this one. I'm just going to run through. And I've just decided to do this on the spot. So I don't even have a presentation which is set up for this one. I'm going to use my maths and physics one. I'm just going to add a new slide to it. So let's just insert just going to insert a new slide at the bottom here. Okay, and so this is going to be the algebra of shopping. Okay, and what I'm aiming to do here, kids hate algebra. Generally, they hate it and they can't see the point of it. But I'm going to show them that they are naturally can think algebraically. So here's a question. You're going into a supermarket and there's two queues. And in the first queue, there are two people. There are two people and they have 10 items each in their baskets. But in the other queue, there's one person and they have 20 items in their basket. And the question is very simple. Which queue are you going to join? And every single kid I've ever come across can see that this would, it's going to be this one person with 20 items. Well, why? And this is a really interesting part here. What's the maths you've done? And I'm going to come to the technology bit in a minute. What's the maths you've done here? And what we've done here is there's two things here. There's two key features here, right? The first thing is the time to scan, which we'll call S. And then the second one is the time to scan. Sorry, the time to scan it, and there's time to pay, which we'll call P. Okay, so we've got time to S and we've got P. And what algebra have we actually done here? Well, there's two people and 10 items here. So what we've actually got here, we've got 2P plus 20S. And what we've got here, we've got 1P plus 20S. So what we can actually do here, we can actually see that 2P plus 20S is greater than 1P plus 20S. And so immediately we can say we naturally can do algebra. We can naturally work out these things with algebra. But this is now where it gets interesting because, So what's happening now is we go, all right, okay. So what's this question now? And I use Jamboard for this all the time, and etc. Because I'm getting people to actually start. What's their thinking? And this is a key thing, elements of maths, of how maths actually works. Okay, just before you actually get there, another person joins the queue of the one person with the 20 items. And now this queue is no longer one person with 20 items. It's now another person with, and they've only got 2 items. And now the question is, which one of these, this one or this one, is actually going to be the quickest queue to join? And the only way you can work this out is find out, hey, S, what value is S? And what value is P? Okay. And here's a question. How might you do that? Well, what we're going to do now, we're going to actually set up an actual shop, and you get the kids to get all of their items, and you set up these things which are actually setting up as a little shop. And what we can do with this one is they have to then decide, they've got to set it up. So as they work through it, it's like a thing of going, okay, so here we go. We've got 20 items to scan. So we're going to use the mean. We'll probably need about 20 items, but let's do as many as possible. And they go beep, beep, beep. And they time how long it takes. But what some of them do, this is wonderful to see this, they'll go, and they put it in because it didn't go beep. And then they take their average of that. So they get the yes, they get the time to scan. But when it comes to the time to pay, well, what are we going to use for the time to pay? You know, we're not going to use the mean. Are we going to use the median? Are we going to use the mode? How are we going to do this? Because some people pay with a card, some people pay this. And again, what you're doing, the students will set it up and they'll do it. So some people are just going to scan the beep, they're going to scan it with their card. Some people are going to shuffle around, find their money, and they're going to find their find the change in it, etc. And they're going to come up with what they think the thing is. And what you now do is say to them, right, okay, so now I've got 2 queues. One's got 3 people, 10, 6, 4 items. The other one's got 2 people with 11, 22 items, whatever. You've got to tell me how long each of those is going to take, and then you're going to tell me, so you're going to make this prediction how long it's going to take and which one's the best to do. And so they all do this, and they can share it on Jamboard, they can share it on the but the best one is to share it on something like Jamboard, because it means they can't cheat. I've done this before. They've just put it on bits of paper, but then they'd have to hand the bits of paper in, then I've got to shuffle them around. If you leave them the bits of paper, they're going to change the bits of paper. And then what we do is we set it up, and as it runs through, we've got all of the Jamboards, which have got all of their times on it, and it's running through, and I'm always the last customer on the last thing. So they've gone through and they can see their times, and then we're running it with the time. So it's showing a time online, got the time going online on it, tick, 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 because Jamboard is being seen as well. I'm always the last customer. And then I come to the customer to go, oh, sorry, actually, is that, I think I've got the wrong paint here. That's a light blue. I would want the dark blue paint. Could somebody change it for me, please? And so somebody has to go and change it. And then when they come back, I can't find my card. Oh, I'm not sure where my card is. And the kids go mental because they can see the times differently. They can see their times, and they can see their times going with this. And what we can do from this is we actually then come up with the final time, and we can see online which of the students have actually worked it. You can then have it, all of their thinking, we're using Google Slides, we're using Moat, we're using all sorts of different aspects of that to get what the students thinking as they're doing this. But fundamentally, there's only one lesson you learn from this. This is mathematical modeling. This is algebra in action. But far more importantly, the mathematical modeling tells you what probably should happen. What it doesn't tell you is really what actually happens. And so that's a little thing you can do with using as an introduction to algebra, where it makes it real. Now what I want to tell you maths teachers to do is to actually help physics teachers. Okay, and one of the things we find is really quite interesting as physics teachers is that if you give a student x equals y over z, what does z equal? They're quite good at that. But when you say acceleration is equal to force divided by mass, or force is mass times acceleration, what's acceleration? They can't do that. They can't link those things together. And so what I want you to do is to look at how we might create stories from algebra and how we can change the way that we perceive it to be. So, and again, the technology, this is not really about the technology, it's about the pedagogy. But I want you to be thinking, well, how can I use a technology to support this pedagogy? So if I just go share screen on this one, and we're going to do a maths in physics slide. So there's a maths in physics slide. Now, there's one thing which is actually about slides and the way we're actually doing we're looking at slides, is keep things really, really clear. Keep things really neat and tidy. Don't make lots of images. Don't have things flashing around, because we're looking at cognitive overload. I just want them to look at two things here. And the two things I'm going to look at is this one. So force is mass times acceleration. So let's just write that down as actually things. So force equals mass times acceleration. And so F equals ma, this is a rubbish story. It's not a story that helps me think. And what we do as maths teachers, we always talk about, right, we need to rearrange the equation. And I don't want you to even just talk about rearranging the equation. I want people, because algebra is something that's really, really difficult to understand. There's a really interesting thing we can do in English, where we can say, right, the cat sat on the mat. The mat is where the cat sat. Sitting is what the cat's doing on the mat. And all three of those things say the same, they tell us the same thing. And what they do, we've just changed the subject. It's the same thing as rearranging a formula, but you can see it in English really, really clearly. Whereas we can't see it as clearly, as students certainly can't see it as clearly when they're actually looking at formulas. So we're not going to tell the story of forces mass times acceleration. We're actually going to tell this story as A equals F over M. And this is where I really want our maths teachers to work with the physics teachers, because what we have here is a ratio. So the acceleration is the force divided by mass. Now, it does a switch to a Jamboard on here. Let me just start sharing that one and switch to the Jamboard, because I just want to show you something. Okay, so if we're actually looking at this one, so I'm just going to quickly do it as A equals F over M, right? So this is our typical thing with the algebra, y equals x over z of y, or something like that, z equals x, y equals x over z, whatever. But this is important because we can really make our students see how ratios work in terms of looking at it from a perspective, a physics perspective.
Sorry, okay. Neil, I'm just going to come in there. Can you just share the Jamboard with me so I can show everybody?
Sorry, is it not sharing up? But I've not shared it. Okay, so sorry. There it is. The A equals F over M. I don't know. Have you seen this before? I don't know if you've seen people delivering like this, right? Because this is fundamental. A is there's three things which are happening here. So I've got my acceleration, and I've got the acceleration is the ratio of the force to the mass. Students can understand how this works, because what you're doing is you're saying to them, right, I'm going to put a load of kids in a room. I'm going to say, right, here's a circle. I want somebody who's going to push me out the circle. Who are you going to choose? And they always choose the biggest person because they can create the biggest force. The biggest force in order to change this one. So what we've actually got here, A is the consequence of the force, which is the and the mass is a constraint. So what we've got is we've got the consequence of the cause divided by the constraint. And this is a story we want to tell, because it's the cause divided by the constraint, which gives us an idea of ratio. We're going to come back to this in a minute to actually see how this actually works. So what I'm going to do here is, again, I'm going to think about the technology. I've got the students thinking, which has got to take place, because this is really, we're talking about deep thinking actually taking place here. So now we're going to create the story. So if I want to have a big A, what do I need? Well, I need a big force. This makes sense. The bigger the person, the bigger the force they're going to create, the bigger the change in motion they're going to create. But hey, guess what happens if there's a little guy instead of the big guy? So when I'm pushing somebody out of the circle and they choose, I say, well, I don't want the big guy. I want to choose the smallest person and make sure they don't have body images person. It's one with the smallest mass. The kids immediately shout, no, you can't have them because they're going to go flying. So they can see how this algebraic relationship works. They can see how this formula works. They can see that the change in motion is dependent on these factors. The bigger the force, the bigger the change in motion, and the greater the mass is, the smaller the change in motion. It's a story, and it's a story that works really, really well. And what we can do there, we can move on from that things of saying, right, well, if I now know that story, if I have a really big force, right, if I now want to interested in the force which is actually happening, how can I change the subject? What is going to happen to the subject when I change this subject to it? Well, let's actually have a look at something different. Let's have a look at, if I had 3 equals 6, what would that one be? Oh, it would be 2. How does that one rearrange to that one? Well, okay, so let's have a look. So what does 2 equal? Well, 2 is going to be equal to 6 over 3. So I can see now what happened to there. Oh, the 2 and the 3 swapped over. So look at them. Oh, let's do this to this. So M is going to be, so look, it's exactly the same thing that happened here. M is going to be F over A. Okay, so the mass is the force acceleration. The F is going to be, well, let's have a look at this one. The 6 equals 3 times 2. And it's about getting them to understand how these numbers will actually, how you can actually use these numbers in order to rearrange those equations. But it's about the stories. And if anyone's interested in this one, I could do another session. You just need to contact it. So let's have a look at the second thing of this one. This is the stories of graphs. And I'm just going to use it here, going to create a story. Sorry to be that this is like last minute. I'm just going to whack this up on here rather than create a new Jamboard. So I'm using this in my classroom here. And we're going to go, right, how might we make graphs real? So here we have a graph of, and maths teachers, this will all become apparent in about 5 minutes time, I hope, before the end of the lesson. Okay, so here's my standard graph. This is a straight line graph and these one, and it might be as a form, okay, so this is y equals mx, but I'm not going to tell them about this first. I'm actually going to give this one a, so what we've got here is this teacher stressiness. This is teacher stressiness, and going along the axis. I know maths teachers, we don't tend to do this, maths teachers. This is why it's advantage there. And this is class noise. Okay. And what are we saying here is, well, what's the story of this graph? Tell me about this teacher. And this about this part here. Absolutely crucial. And by the way, I can record all of this and I can give this back to the students afterwards. This 0, 0, what does it mean? Well, it means when the class is really quiet, the teacher's not stressed. How realistic is that? Probably not very realistic. What does a straight line mean? Well, it means doubling the class noise doubles the teacher stressiness. Okay, so let's, before we talk about M, we talk about anything else, let's draw another teacher. This is teacher A, and this is teacher B. And when we look at teacher A and teacher B, which one's the stressier? And I've done this with primary kids, everyone, and they will immediately say B is stressier. Okay. How do we know that? What's going on here? And we're talking about this. We're talking about the gradient. We're talking about the gradient being the rate of stressiness. Okay. And so what we've actually got is we're still this one. It has a greater gradient. It's got a greater rate. Still not talking about mx plus c yet. I'm now going to look at teacher C. So here's teacher C. Okay. So we've got teacher A, B. What's the difference between teacher C and teacher B, kids? And they can virtually all tell you, teacher C starting off stressier. It's the same rate. It's the same rate of stressiness, but teacher C started off as stressier. hey, guess what I'm doing at this point? I'm going to put in the form y equals mx plus c. And what have I got here, guys? What's m? Oh, m is the gradient, the rate of stressiness. What's c? C, actually probably shouldn't use teacher C, using something different because that'll cause confusion. C is the initial stressiness of it. It's the intercept with the y-axis, but we want to tell it as a story. And so if we can tell it as a story, suddenly y equals mx plus c makes sense to kids. And once they can do that, you can go, okay, tell me about this one. What's teacher D like? Well, teacher D starts off stressy, but the noise has no effect on them. So we can say, well, what's going to be the equation of the line? Well, the equation of the line is going to be y equals, there's no m on this one, y equals actually c at this point because it's actually there. But tell me, what is that, teacher? Well, probably like me, I can say this, probably deaf, because I actually have a congenital hearing loss, and plus noise, I can just turn my hearing aids down because that's what the kids always tell me to do if I decide that they're too noisy. So what I want you to do to see from this is the fundamental things of looking at different shaped graphs. And we can do all sorts of different ones. And what I've done before with the students is actually I've got them to create their own, either using Jamboards or any of the drawing apps. And this to me is the absolute joy of having a tablet or having some screen or a computer which actually has a stylus. And I used to think that actually tablets, I used to think iPads were the best things for education, but I don't actually think that anymore. And I think partly because I think iPads are kind of not seen as work devices, and I'd much rather have something like the Asus, something like that, which actually looks like a proper computer, but you can draw on it as well. And if there's one thing I just want to show you of the key thing, that one student once did this and they shared this with it, and they shared it through Google Classroom on a note. So they did this drawing and then they did a voice note on it. And so let's change the color. Let's just change the color of that one so we can see it better. And they drew this and it went down like that. Okay, now this was a year 8 student, fairly average ability year 8 student. And I wanted to think, well, what's the story of that graph? And again, using technology, we can share all these. We can use something like Padlet. We can put all these different graphs on. People can talk about the stories. And she said, well, the teacher came in stressy, started off and had a high rate of stressiness. And a little change made a big difference to them. This is what the kid told me. And they told me this one. And I got this one. And I got it all recorded. And I could share this with everyone else. But they couldn't get stressier forever. So they actually reached this point here where they reached a point of maximum stressiness. Okay. And you can see here, I'm using this. I'm just using this just like a student might use this. Just the most basic functions of all. Nothing fancy here at all. They reach a maximum stressiness here. This is, couldn't get any stressier than that. That's the level of maximum stressiness. Okay, so guess what happened here? This was a heart attack. The teacher had had enough and died. Boof. And the question is, how could students create these ideas and these stories and share these stories and share them verbally with me as something I can keep and use another time without the technology? They can't. That's all from me. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you've gained something from it. It's not a standard do this, do this, do this. I hope it's just more a case of this is how me as an educator thinks about technology and thinks about it. And the Google, I absolutely love Google Classroom, the suite of tools, and give me a class full of students with a tablet, with a stylus, and I'm in heaven, because we can share all of these things. If they've got recording, if they can voice record as well, why on earth would we ever use a book when I have all of these tools at my disposal? But never forget, this is not actually about the technology. It's about tea bags. If you saw the first one, it's about stories. It's about sharing things. It's about the excitement. It's about the enlightenment. That's what it's about. It's not about something which looks fancy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's been so practical. And even I've just sat there and I was like, oh, I like that idea. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to Neil, who stepped in at the last minute to deliver our little session there on maths and the science. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much. So just to finish off now, we are just going to go through the last couple of little things here. There's an upcoming summits events coming up in the next couple of months. We have the European Google Summit, which is in November 18th and 19th, and that's hosted in Amsterdam. We've also got, like I mentioned before, the Northwest UK Certification Bootcamp. That's happening on the 21st of October in Manchester. And then we've got Future of Education. So that's more based in Korea. And that will be based on the 19th and 20th of November. So if you are tuning in from different areas of the world, please do look up on appsevents.com what bootcamps and summits are happening and get yourself signed up to them. And lastly, I'd just like to say a big thank you from myself and from Neil there, who you really we've done it last second here, and I hope you've taken something away from it. Thank you for participating tonight, and that is it. Thank you.